We've caught all 151 of Kanto. We've journeyed through Johto, we've hiked through Hoenn, we've seen Sinnoh and unveiled Unova. So now it's just time to talk about the future of Pokemon. Hey guys, I'm Elegant and welcome to another Pokevlog. So yes, as I said before, I'm going to be talking about the future of Pokemon. Finally, I've been waiting to do this for like a couple of weeks, but things have gotten in my way. So finally it's here, talking about the future of Pokemon, because I've gone through all the other regions. So yeah, a lot of people suspect that the Hoenn remakes are going to be sometime next year or the year after. Some people are expecting it in for the 5th gen. Not many people are expecting the 6th gen to come soon, so I'm going to go over the reasons why, of all the why they would have the Ruby and Sapphire remakes, why they would have a 6th generation, and what the 6th generation would be, and the reasons why. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is that the Pokemon games do seem to have a pairing together. So if you look at the Pokemon games in the generations, like the 1st generation and the 2nd generation, kind of a pair. Well, they definitely were a pair because they were Kanto and Johto. And as you know, Kanto and Johto are joined together, quite directly a pair, and they have the same Pokemon League, similar characters, and same Elite Four, and they're basically a pair, the first pair. But the second pair, not so clear, but it's Hoenn and Sinnoh. And the reason why I see these as a pair is because Hoenn was actually a new start for Pokemon, because the Hoenn region was never meant to happen. The Pokemon actually was meant to stop after Johto, which I'm so glad it didn't, because just really glad it didn't, because imagine if Pokemon had stopped. It'd be such a big different world, I suppose. I wouldn't even have got into YouTube. So yeah, Hoenn and Sinnoh, they were sort of a new start of Pokemon, and Hoenn had Pokemon contests in the Battle Frontier, and added quite a few new features, and was quite different from the original 2 games because it was meant to be a new start. And a lot of these things were carried on into Sinnoh and developed in the Sinnoh game. So what seems to happen is that the Pokemon seem to make a new game, or a new sort of style of game. For example, like Kanto and Hoenn were the 2 new games, because Kanto was obviously the new game because it was the first Pokemon game, and Hoenn was a new start. And then they seem to develop it onto the next game that they do. They develop the ideas, which is quite interesting, because Unova was actually a new start. And what actually does happen though is that with development of the game, it actually puts it onto the new platform. You might not think for the first 2 games, because the first 2 games, the Johto games and the Kanto games, they were both on the Game Boy Classic, but the Kanto games were on the Game Boy just regular Classic, and the Johto games were on the Game Boy Color, so therefore it does develop onto a new platform. And the Hoenn and Sinnoh was a big difference. Hoenn was on the GBA, and Sinnoh was on the DS, so we could be expecting the 6th generation to be on the 3DS, since these seem to develop the ideas on the next platform. Plus, with the fact that Pokemon tend to wait just a little bit, wait a generation before they go into the newest platform, which also allows them to develop the most techniques and the best, basically get the best out of the new sort of software. So yeah, Unova was a new start, so we can expect a development of that in the 6th generation. What I'm expecting is for things like the Pokemon Theatre, the World Tournaments, the Pokemon Musicals was what I mean by the theatre, and Pokestar Studios, some of those things to be implemented in the 6th generation, because of the fact that the Pokemon contests and the Pokemon Battle Frontier were all taken from the 3rd generation and put in the 4th generation. So I'm expecting a similar thing if Pokemon does carry on with this pairing of the games. You'll also find some other similarities between the pairs I talked about if you want to look into that more. So, yeah, there's also a timeline in Pokemon, and you might not know this, but in the games, you have several characters that refer to things that happened in the past, which has actually happened in other games. So, a timeline has actually been built up, and Kanto and Hoenn were the earliest on games, and they were together at the similar or the same time period. And Johto and Sinnoh was a bit after the occurrence of Kanto and Hoenn, because there's a few references in them, and these did actually take place after the Kanto and Hoenn games, which is quite strange, because that doesn't actually go in the order that they were made, but that's how Pokemon's doing it. And Unova was made the newest, but there's no game parallel to when Unova is in its time, which is quite interesting, because Kanto and Hoenn were the remakes of the 3rd generation. Well, you had the Hoenn, it was the third generation. The remake was Kanto, so the remake was the game that was in the same time zone and time period of the game that existed in that generation, which is the same with the Sinnoh game, because the Sinnoh was same time game is Johto, and Johto was remade in the 4th generation, but that leaves Unova with no pairing to be at the same time with, so therefore it doesn't have the capability of having a remake if you follow this sort of pattern. But what could happen if we had a Hoenn remake? They could make the Hoenn game in sometime in the future, which I think would be a brilliant idea, because simply the Hoenn game had lots of references in the Hoenn game and in other games that it wasn't quite finished and there was more to happen in the future. Hence all your rivals not going to full strength, and Steven actually breaking the 4th wall in the 4th generation and telling you he's sure he'll see you again. So that could be reference to the Hoenn games being remade in a similar time zone to the Unova region. So yeah, I don't know what you think about this, but I quite love a sort of a new, more developed storyline in the Hoenn region. So Ruby and Sapphire were actually the biggest games for the version differences, because before the Ruby and Sapphire games there wasn't really any version differences other than the fact you could get a Vulpix in one game and a Growlithe in the other game. It was just a few Pokemon differences in the games, which wasn't particularly very advertising to buy both of them. You bought one or the other and you got the Pokemon you didn't have from your friends or whatever. Which was a good idea and such, but it wasn't really making you buy both of them really to complete the game and get all the experience you could do. But in Ruby and Sapphire, the game was split. Ruby had Team Magma, and Sapphire had Team Aqua, and this meant you had 2 different storylines, similar storylines of course, because you couldn't have the same game completely different. But there were 2 completely different storylines that followed a similar parallel pattern. But that meant you could get one or the other and you could have a different experience. You could do both of them and have a different experience, which is something that stayed in Hoenn, because Sinnoh didn't really have a separation in the storyline between Diamond and Pearl, really. I mean, it had a few legendary differences, but that's about it. And then Pokemon Black and White, really, I couldn't even say that was more different than, the games are more different than in the Ruby and Sapphire, because the storyline was still the same in either Black and White, simply just using a different legendary. The only major differences in Pokemon Black and White is Black City and White Forest and Black City. So I still think Ruby and Sapphire is pretty strong on the version differences. So for that reason, I think they should make an even bigger version difference for the remake, if they do remake one. And I think maybe what I've said before, they should do Pokemon contests in one and Pokemon battles in the other, because that would be amazing. I love Pokemon contests. And that will make a completely different experience for the 2 games. Still make the gyms and the contests accessible in the one that you don't follow the storyline of. But make it so one follows the contest and one follows the gym battles. That'd be brilliant. I think that'd be really good. And it would definitely make Pokemon bring in more money to by people buying one and the other, which I think is a really good idea. Also, the fact that the remakes give Pokemon more of an opportunity to experiment with things, because of the fact it's a remake, it's not actually a new game in the main series. It's part of the main series, but not quite, because the game's already been made. It's just a remake, therefore allowing Pokemon to be more experimental. Hence, in Heart Gold Soul Silver, you had the ability to walk with your Pokemon behind you, which is another thing. I think if they do a remake of Ruby and Sapphire, I think they should definitely make sort of your Pokemon. I don't think you should be carrying on sailing on Whalmer constantly, is what I'm trying to say. When you're surfing on Pokemon, you should definitely be able to see what Pokemon you're surfing on as a sprite, because they can obviously do that since they implemented all the sprites into Heart Gold Soul Silver. And also when you're diving, maybe you could have some sort of a mask on, and you could be like holding your Pokemon with your Pokemon like dragging you along like that under the water. I think that should be a really cool, nifty idea. It's not such a big thing, and it probably isn't too difficult to program, but it's a quite little cool thing. You can see which Pokemon, it's more personal, but you should also definitely be able to walk with your Pokemon. So yeah, I also think the next step for Pokemon is downloadable content, like in-game downloadable content. Like you can download a new island, new Pokemon, like complete new areas in the game. But I think we're probably going to have to wait for 3DS and the eShop to do that, and I don't think Ruby and Sapphire are going to be on the 3DS, simply because every remake has been on the same platform as its counterpart in the it's not its counterpart, it's the other games in the generation, and no generation split between 2 consoles. But Pokemon are changing up things, so we could do, but I doubt we're going to get that for Ruby and Sapphire, because downloadable content might actually take a little bit of a while to get implemented, but it'd be really cool if we could get in the 6th generation. I also think a few new good ideas for the Ruby Sapphire remakes would be to have the version differences, like I said before, but also some extra islands with side quests would be a good idea, because Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire was very ocean based, and therefore islands would work well with it, because a lot of people did complain about the water routes, so islands would be a good idea for that. Plus there was a lot of you couldn't go to several islands you could see on the map, is what I'm trying to say. And also there should be developed hidden bases. I think hidden bases should be much better in the new DS games, because there's a lot of limitations in the Game Boy Advance. So I think if they do remake it, they had so much more capability of updating the hidden bases, because I didn't like them in Diamond and Pearl. And that's another thing, there was hidden bases in Diamond and Pearl and Ruby and Sapphire, and there wasn't in any of the games. That's another thing that they repair for. But I really think they should be updated and have a similar sort of style, but be updated and be much better. You should also be able to fly to them, because I've always found that a bit of an irritating thing. Having to go and talk to a girl to see where your hidden base is, which is kind of strange. But also the landscape was a big feature of the Hoenn region, the different landscapes and the different areas of the region. I don't think any other region has had such diverse and brilliant landscapes as Hoenn did. And Hoenn's like the best for everything in music as well. I think that was really good. So I'd love to see developed landscapes and developed music, like enhanced and remade. It'd be really cool, although both of these things would work much better on the 3DS, so it could be on the 3DS, I don't know, they would work very well on the 3DS. So, a lot of people tend to say the Kanto and the Johto games, Gen 1 and Gen 2, couldn't connect with the newer games at all whatsoever, so that was the reason they were remade. But the Hoenn games can connect to them if you have a DS or a regular DS or a DS Lite. In the GBA slot, you can actually connect to them. A lot of people say that's a reason why they wouldn't remake it, because you still can connect. But I don't think that's a legitimate statement, because with all the DSIs and the 3DSs and all the new DSs that don't have the GBA slot now, it's becoming harder and harder to connect your older games to your Emerald, Ruby and Sapphire games to your new DS games. And not to mention that Emerald's still the only region not to be on the DS, so that's quite clearly a region to remake and put onto the 5th generation. I think it'd be brilliant if they did that, and I would love them to. So it's also in high demand, so I really don't think they wouldn't remake it, because so many people demand it. It's probably the highest demanded game it's been for such a long time, because people were anticipating it before Pokemon Black and White 2. People were thinking Pokemon Black and White 2 were going to be the Ruby and Sapphire remakes, and it had a lot of hate at first, but now so many people are really wanting it, so I can't imagine Pokemon not doing it, because they would make so much money out of it. So I want to say thank you to Bulbasaur King, who sent me a video he made of Ruby Sapphire remake ideas. So I'm just going to go over a few of them, because I want to mention them, because they're very good ideas. I also put a link down in the description for you to check out the video that he sent me. Also check out his channel and look at his other stuff as well. It's pretty good. He's got a few good ideas. So what he did show in the video was sort of an interview with a Pokemon game designer just after the release of Pokemon Black and White 2. And what this showed was the game designer wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. He said he wasn't sure what was going to happen. To quote him, he wasn't sure what he was going to get in Monday in the office. So we don't know, of course. But what he did say, what he did bring up most of all, was the Heart Gold Soul Silver games, the previous remakes. They really concentrated on those, and he also said, look at what's happened in the past, and just use that, meaning that it was a pattern in the Pokemon games, and therefore it really does seem like we're going to get the Hoenn remakes, because he was talking about the remakes, talking about the patterns of the past and how it's going to reoccur. It's quite obvious that Hoenn remakes, I would say, and they would work very well. So yeah, that's what I would expect. So yeah, he also actually showed a really cool weird thing. I'll put it on the screen now, you'll be able to see the picture. And what the picture shows is it's actually from episode 3 of Pokemon Black and White in the anime. And what it shows is a river going down. And what the river is in the shape of is actually the Team aqua logo, which is really weird. I've never noticed this before, but it's a really cool thing that this was a Team Aqua logo. I don't know if this is on purpose, but it really does resemble it. And it's steaming hot water, land and lava, and it just literally just reminds me of the whole theme of the Hoenn games, which I don't know whether that was on purpose, or whether it was intended to make people think of remakes, or just intended just to be a cool thing referencing Hoenn, but that was really interesting that they did that. I mean, if Pokemon are purposely trying to hint to the next games, and I'm pretty sure the next games are going to be the Hoenn remakes, because there's so many hints, unless they are just trying to put in some cool things from previous games, because we don't know which one they're doing at the moment, whether they're actually trying to hint to us or just putting cool things in the games. So anyway, that's it for the information I wanted to talk about this week. I didn't want to really go over the other stuff I've gone over in the other Pokevlogs I've talked about, the future games. So let's move on to the question of the week. So this week's question of the week is, what's your favourite thing about Hoenn? And what do you want to see in remakes, and what do you want to see like updated and stuff? I mentioned this in the video before, but what I love about Hoenn is the music. The music is the best thing about it, and the landscapes and just everything about Hoenn is my favourite thing ever. So I'd love to see extended areas and additional islands and things like that to make it a bit more interesting in the water areas. Also, because it also felt quite blocked off in the water areas, maybe you can make it a bit more open, have a few more islands and more places to visit. It would be a really good idea. Also, I really want to see the development of hidden bases, as I said before, music and landscaping. It'd be really cool if it could be on 3DS, but I doubt that, unless it actually is going to be in the 6th generation, which would actually skip out the 5th generation's remake, which I don't know whether to do that or not, but that would be pretty cool. That's definitely what I'd like to see it developed and integrated into the Hoenn remake. So please comment down about that below, and I'm going to say thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.